club to determine if he violated the league's COVID-19 protocols, putting the All-Stars availability for tonight's season opener in question, sources telling our Tim McMahon. Now, that video was published by Black Sports Online. It purportedly was from a Houston strip club's Christmas party that was held this week. And this is all, guys, coming off of yesterday's report where, according to The Athletic, Harden had multiple verbal confrontations with teammates at practice, also threw a ball at Jae'Sean Tate. So, Max, I want to start with you here. Are all of these off-the-court actions by Harden going to affect his trade value?
No, I don't really think so, because I think everyone knows what he's doing. You know, unless teams are looking, going, well, if he's not happy here, he'll pull the same thing. But, you know, if a superstar wants to leave and he's not being accommodated, this is their leverage. So it's pretty clear Harden's acting out in order to get an effect. Stephen A., whether or not how much that affects his trade value, I'll leave to you. I'll tell you what I think has absolutely affected his trade value. I mentioned off the top of the show, if I were the Nets, I would not trade for Harden. Not because he's not a great player, but because their depth really showed itself yet last night, the way they shared the ball, the whole thing. I'll tell you who else I wouldn't trade if I were another team. I wouldn't trade Ben Simmons for James Harden. Not after last night, Stephen A., because if you watch the Brooklyn Nets, there's one guy on the Sixers that you're like, okay, there's no defending Kevin Durant, but the guy who can do the best possible job is Ben Simmons, who I thought, when active, was the best defender in the world last year. If I'm the Sixers and I'm watching KD last night, and I'm going, he's already at least 80% KD, we're going to need Ben Simmons on that cat, right? And I'm not trading Embiid, so what does that leave you with? Spare parts? So I think right now, after last night and the way KD looked, especially in the way the Nets looked, if I were the Nets, I wouldn't trade for him. If I were the Sixers, I wouldn't give up Simmons for him. If his trade value is going down, I think it's based on that stuff, on-court considerations after last night, more than it is on his misbehavior off the court in order to force a trade.
Well, first of all, let me say a couple of things. Number one, if you talk to the Houston Rockets, they will tell you they're not getting the quality offers for James Harden that one would anticipate from a league-leading scorer over the last 3 years who averaged over 30. They expected better offers. They're not getting those quality offers from him. That's why he's still in a Houston Rockets uniform, just to make sure that from a repertorial perspective, I point that out. The other thing that I would say is this. When you talk about Ben Simmons in the fashion that you do, Max, it comes down to this. If you're the Philadelphia 76ers, is it a long-term view where it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and you're thinking about 3, 4, and 5 years down the road? Or are you talking about the Brooklyn Nets and what they are and what they're trying to be and how you're going to compete with them? Because I got news for you. Ben Simmons not having any kind of perimeter game whatsoever is not going to get it done for the Philadelphia 76ers when all is said and done. I don't give a damn how well he plays defense. There's no one on the planet Earth that can stop Kevin Durant, not even Ben Simmons. It ain't happening. Kevin Durant is flowing and he's healthy. You're not stopping him. He's still giving you 27 to 30 a night. You can book that. And so because of it, the way to offset it is to have such prolific firepower offensively that you pressurize an opposing offense by highlighting for them the inability or just being cautious enough not to make mistakes because you will pay a price. It's not that James Harden's going to give you the defense that Ben Simmons is going to give you. It's that his offense is so prolific, it puts more pressure on an opposing offense to be productive because you know this brother is coming. Now, to get to the point about off-court issues impacting Harden's trade value, we completely agree on that. We're totally on the same page. It has no effect, and here's why. Everyone knows what James Harden is doing. James Harden is a professional. Yeah, the lateness. Yeah, being, preferential treatment. We get all of that. But this brother plays hurt. He doesn't miss games. He doesn't engage in load management. He shows up and balls every single night. In that regard, he is a high-level professional. For him to act this way, it is clearly and flagrantly on purpose. He is doing this to bring attention to everyone and their mother. He does not want to be a Houston Rocket any longer. He wants out. And I don't want to call him the modern day T.O. or whatever when T.O. was trying to get out of his contract in Philadelphia, because that's what those push-ups were about in his driveway when Andy Reid sent him home and all of that other stuff. T.O. wanted a new contract. He wanted out of Philadelphia because Philadelphia made it clear they were not going to give it to him. And as a result, he was advised by Drew Rosenhaus essentially to act up to some degree to force his way out of Philadelphia. In this case, that's what James Harden is doing. He's trying to force his way out of Houston. He does not want to be a Houston Rocket. He wants out by any means necessary, and he is creating a headache because he knows that's the only way with 2 years left on his contract that he could possibly get his way. He's not that guy. He's not stupid by any stretch of the imagination. He's doing it on purpose because he wants out. Other teams know that. And if he fills their needs without them having to mortgage the farm to get him, they're not.
This is why I kept saying the Sixers thinking, the Rockets thinking we're not getting good offers for Harden, not equal value. Let's wait until we get better offers. The longer they wait, the worse it's going to be, not the better. I talked about this because they know he's a distressed asset. And by the way, an unhappy superstar, well, you have him under contract for 2 years. What is he going to do? You don't want it. The NBA, the fact of the matter is the players have very little leverage against the owners in negotiations. They're negotiating against billionaires with a de facto monopoly in their sport. But the owners have very little leverage with players. If a superstar player wants out, there's not a lot the owner can do. There's not a lot the team can do. Because, he's got to earn his money. There are ways he can earn his money and still not really give you his all and become a disruptive force and make it untenable to keep him. So they got to move him. They will move him. Mark my words, they will move him. And the longer they wait, the worse it'll get. And Stephen A., part of his strategy when you misbehave to try to force yourself out is his trade value goes down. And it's not that the Rockets are going to think, well, now we can't get a good enough deal for him, so we're not going to deal him. Wrong. What's going to happen is they're just going to eventually take the best deal, which is going to be much worse than it would have been had they dealt him sooner. In other words, he knows the more his trade value goes down, the easier it is for other teams to get him because they don't have to give up as much.
Well, let me say this to you, Max.
Max, how
First
soon
of all,
do you
we
see this trade
respectfully
happening?
disagree. Hold on, Charlie. Hold on, Charlie. We respectfully disagree in this sense. When you talk about him in terms of his behavior and what have you, understand something. It's not about his trade value going down. His trade value is not going to go down. They already are not getting those quality offers that they wanted for him because they're asking for the farm because he is James Harden and he's so prolific. I'm going to give you a strategy that I would think would be in the best interest of James Harden. You know what? Just sit out. Sit out and sacrifice some pay if you have to get the hell out, because then that it's not frowned upon as much as if you were being a distraction. He might have to reach a point where, in a sense, he's almost doing this because, again, he was in that bubble. He knows the protocols. He knows the rules. Max, he knows that ultimately a video is going to come out that's going to hinder his ability to show up and play because they're going to say you don't need to be around other teams. You could have been exposed, et cetera, et cetera. The bottom line is he didn't care enough. So in the end, he might be better off just saying, I want out. There's no reason for me to be back here. See what trades you can work out rather than being around the team and causing a disruption. And if he's not willing to do that, Tillman Fertitta and Raphael Stone, the new GM, may need to say, yo, man, go home. They might need to do that because he clearly does not want to be there.
So how soon is this trade going to happen? Stephen A., you can answer that one since you just spoke.
Well, we don't know. That's the whole point. Max is talking about how, listen, we all know that they're going to move him because he doesn't want to be there. It's just a matter of when. And when is determined by the quality of offer they get or their willingness to settle for considerably less. Usually, come around the trading deadline or what have you, that's when stuff like that transpires. James Harden is clearly not in the mood to wait. Everything he is doing is because he wants the world to know I'm being forced to stay here. I don't want to be gone. He almost might have been better off, like Kendrick Perkins said to me last week, taking the extra 2-year extension for the $50 million per, $103 million to be exact, because you would have been locked up for 4 years instead of 2. And that way, anyone who gets you knows that they're keeping you for the long haul, and they might have been more receptive to that. But his situation is what it is.
Yeah, it's a very tough situation, and there is some more information coming from Tim McMahon this morning as well. Sources telling him that James Harden actually was diagnosed with COVID-19 this past summer before the NBA's